Hello and welcome to Tea Talk with Rance. That's me, and I am the author of this book right here called Instructional Story Design. And I'm thrilled that you have joined us this morning. This has been a series of Tea Talks on the LearnOps platform. And in the Storytelling Advantage portion of the LearnOps platform is where you can find all the recordings of our past Tea Talks. So you are welcome to go and watch those. And in a little bit, we'll give you a link to that. First, I'm going to share a quick video from our sponsor, Cognota, who made it possible for us to meet here today.
This session is sponsored by Cognota. Still struggling with fragmented L&D tools? Transform learning operations into business impact. Cognota streamlines learning operations within one platform. For more information, a link is provided in the chat.
Right, so we're very grateful to Cognota for providing the LearnOps platform and for having this meeting today. So John has put a, a link in the chat for Cognota. And speaking of John, I'd like to introduce him. John is a technology wrangler for our meeting today. He is an instructional story design external consultant with a focus on articulate storyline. John hosts his own online workshop called Get Good with Articulate Storyline. And in fact, I think you have a meeting tonight, John.
That is, I'm clicking a button now to put the link right into the chat window. Tonight we are going to do a presentation of the artificial intelligence that is now built right into Storyline. So if you use Storyline or you're interested in just, well, what can that do? The link to register for the workshop is in the chat window, and look forward to seeing you there.
Thank you, John. All right, let's get into what we are going to be talking about today, which is what does story-based training look like? So before we get into that, I'd like for you to answer a quick poll. And John, if you wouldn't mind putting that link to the poll in the chat, and make sure it's to not just to me, but also to the group.
Okay. Did I not do that with the first one?
It's okay. I repasted it into the thing. There, that's it. That's the link to the
Okay.
poll. Go ahead and click on that and answer. First thing that's going to pull up, I'm going to share my screen so that you can also see answers as they come in. Just a moment. There it is. Okay. Okay, so you should see on the screen humanizing the L&D process. Do you see that, John? Do you see it? Do y'all see?
Yes, that is on the screen now.
Okay, great.
Nice flow chart there with brown boxes.
Good. All right. So what we have been doing as during these Tea Talks is going through the L&D process to see it- build strategies for humanizing the process at each moment along the way. So sharing the L&D story, the intake process, and consulting, interviewing, designing, communicating internally, and sharing data. And today we're focused on the design box. To see recordings of things that have come before this, you can go to the Storytelling Advantage and click on the Recordings tab. So John, if you wouldn't mind, go ahead and putting the Storytelling Advantage link in the chat, and folks can Go and view those recordings that talk about the things that come before what we're going to talk about today. So the poll is this. So if you haven't gone to the link yet, maybe John, you can repost the link to the
Okay, reposting the link right now.
and just answer this first question for me. How does your L&D team view stories? And if you're having any troubles with accessing the poll, you can even answer this in the chat. Do they view it central to training, nice to have but not crucial? You want to train with stories, but you're unsure of how to get started, not convinced they are valuable. Okay, so we have three of you who believe that your L&D team views stories as central to training. Three of you who feel like, yeah, nice to have, not necessarily crucial. Cool, that's good. I'd like you to answer one more question for me, please. What's the biggest barrier to training with stories for your team? And thank you, Team Alone, for your comment. You want to train, but unsure of where to start. Good.
Rance, what if there are no barriers? Did I just not answer the question?
Then you are amazing. You can put that in the chat, Nick. If your L&D team has a clear line to creating training with stories in them, awesome. Awesome.
Or maybe he should be facilitating the session.
No, you don't want that.
Yes, yes. Yeah, we'll definitely be having some discussions, so I'd love to hear what you guys are doing, Nick. So lack of ability is another barrier. Yep. So a lot of you are struggling with time, and some of you with resistance from stakeholders. Understandable. Time and resistance from stakeholders. And I think that a lot of people say, times just take so long to create because one of the first things they think of when they think of stories is that stories are videos and videos take a long time to produce and stories do not equal video per se. Stories can be produced in some very quick and efficient ways that don't involve video. Others just feel like perhaps, stories are, they take a lot of creative time to think of the stories. So I'm going to share with you today a process of creating stories that really builds on a model that gets you to the story quite quickly and then show you how to train with that story quite efficiently. So my curiosity is piqued, Nick. I would love to hear from you about what your group is doing as regarding storytelling.
Well, uh, everything that we do that's soft skills or professional skills has stories integrated into the trainings. We find that they are really good ways to get engagement and often communicate ideas that without using stories would be complicated or not easy to understand, perhaps. It gives people context, right? The best
Yes.
way to explain a new topic is to give someone something to latch onto.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. I love how you put that. Like, without the story, it would make the activities within the training seem awkward, seem clumsy,
Yeah.
uh, contrived sometimes.
Mhm.
So yeah,
Yeah. And it
I
adds
love
nuance. And the reason there are no barriers is because I'm the boss and I insist that we use stories in everything. So
it.
that's why there's no barriers.
Yes, love it. Okay, good. So I'm glad that a position of authority is like totally up for stories. So that's great, Nick.
Helpful.
Anybody else want to share something that they're doing that their team is doing regarding storytelling and training? Anybody? All right. Well, I would like to kind of take us to the beginning. Where does storytelling begin in the instructional design process?
Mm,
It begins.
at the end.
Oh, who said that? Beginning with the end in mind is definitely good.
Okay, I said that. Oh, my.
But often, it begins with something like this. When a stakeholder comes to us and says, we need training, we need training. So from the very first conversation, that is where storytelling for training begins. These first conversations set the pace for the type of quality story you create and the training that follows the story. Because what happens during that state, what happens after this statement is made? Like, we ask questions, right? We ask a lot of questions to find out what's going on. Now, it could be that we ask, okay, well, what's the topic? And you find out, oh, well, our managers need help with conducting one-on-ones. And you've seen the result of very short conversations with stakeholders many times. They look a little bit like this. So here's the course: how to conduct a one-on-one. Let's begin. We start with some learning objectives and a definition, purpose. How often? Okay. By this time, your eyes are starting to glaze over just a little bit. And then, oh, hey, something to click. Awesome. Let's do that. We have a scenario. Okay, so and let's choose C. Oh, not right. Let's try again. Here we go. It's got to be this one since it's so much longer than the other ones. And we're right. Oh, now we have an assessment. We're going to drag and drop all these little things into the correct order because now we'll know the steps for conducting a one-on-one meeting, which will show proficiency. We passed. Click the X in the top right-hand corner of the screen to receive credit for this awesome course. All right, so you've taken these courses before. You might be hanging your head in shame and saying, yeah, I've created one of these courses before. So let's talk a little bit about that. What are your observations for that kind of experience? What's your connection with that kind of course? Do you have a connection with that kind of course? Okay, so Alicia says boring. Nick has has the bed. Any other reactions?
I mean, we see that a lot with compliance training, right? Those types of things with compliance training. And
Yes.
we don't really care. So we just leave it that way because we don't care about compliance training. At least that's how, wait, this is being recorded. We love compliance training. These courses are uneditable because we purchase them. So we see that a lot.
Okay. Yeah, yeah. Exactly, exactly. So, and I have a personal uh, heart actually for compliance training. I think it's a huge missed opportunity. It's like the one set of courses that every single person in the company has to take, and we have a chance to showcase. We have a chance, to provide performance-based compliance training, but usually it's not. Zainab, it's unfortunately what learners have come to expect when they hear the word training. And you're correct, Zainab, that is unfortunate. Alicia,
Yeah, I was gonna say there is no connection because it's not human
there anywhere, so there is no connection with the human that is going to use that information. So it's totally disconnected.
Yes. So, yep, disconnected because of the lack of humanity within the course. Good, good. Well, I would like to share a quick video with you. But before I do that, let's rewind. Let's rewind. Okay, stakeholder comes. We need training for our managers. So in this conversation, it's not just going to be what topic it is, right? You're going to find out what the root problem is, what the business outcome should be, and what part of this is training going to impact, if any. What's the ideal solution? Looking at it in a very holistic way, how will behavior change be achieved? And training is usually only a part of that equation. So root problem, business outcome, ideal solution. And once you have determined that training could be a good solution, then you start asking questions of your subject matter expert. Okay, what do you want people to do as a result of this training? So we know it's about they're struggling to conduct one-on-one meetings, and these are some of the answers you're probably going to get from the subject matter expert. Things like this. Right? But there is something inherently out of whack with this list. What is it?
Doesn't go into how you actually do it.
True. That is part of the problem with this list, Nick. And the way I would say that is, what we're looking for are observable actions. You can't really do any of these things, so a lot of times subject matter experts will say, be aware. Be aware, understand. And so being aware, a good follow-up question to that is, okay, if an employee is aware of this, what do they do when they're aware of that? Or they may say, this is just a knowledge-based course, and so you need to ask then, okay, what would somebody actually do with this knowledge in the workplace? Then you have the avoid disruptions, which is not a performance at all. It's a non-performance objective, I guess. And so we can't train people to not do things, right? So we need to look for positive, observable actions. That is what needs to make it onto our action list. And I would say this is the one thing that makes stories not work for training. This is the main thing. If this is gotten wrong, stories for training do not have an impact. But we can change this. There's not, this is information that could be useful and give us an idea of what we're going to be training on, but it's not something that we can train people to do yet. So this action list could look more like this. Okay, now we're starting with verbs. That's good. Okay, so there's several steps for preparing for the meeting. Review the coaching form. There's like a form you're giving me to do this. This is awesome. This is helpful. I can silence my phone. I can turn off my computer screen. Welcome them into the space. There might be some little sub actions underneath that one, right, to help explain it further. Same with give them your undivided attention. And then demonstrate empathy by doing something very specific. So now these things I could watch somebody do these things. And as a learner, when I look at this, I can read down through this list and be like, well, yeah, I could do those things. I can do this. I might need some help learning how to do some of these things, but I could do these things. So make your action list positive, observable actions. This is so needed when creating a story for training, and I will show you how. The next question I want to know is, who am I training? Who am I training? Well, I know I'm training managers, but who are these people? So let me stop sharing for a moment and just ask you guys, when you have a new learning audience, what are some of the things that you ask about this learning audience to get to know them? What do you want to know about them? And you can speak out loud or you can put it in the chat. What do you want to know about your learning audience before you design training for them? Okay, so Nick, how many learners? Where are they? What are their roles? Okay, those are good things to know. Alicia, their roles, their level of experience. That's good. Like, like kind of what do they already know about this, right? That's good, Alicia. Zainab, the barriers that they face when trying to do the action list. I like that one, Zainab. That's that's nice. Learning styles. What do they want to improve? Anil, do they know about the training? Do they even know that this training exists? Good. Good. So these are all good and helpful things. Management buy-in. Haha. Yeah. So things outside of training, so that's good. That's something that a conversation to have with a stakeholder right away. In fact, I just had a meeting with a client recently, and they're having me come and train their sales team on how to tell stories. And one of the things that they wanted was longevity. Like they want their sales folks to like continue doing what they're going to be trained to do at this conference. And so I said, okay, I can do some things for you that will help equip your leaders to quality check their sales pitches, but you can't expect it continue without management buy-in. So that's nice, team alone. Awesome. All right, so I'm going to add some questions to put on your list. When you are training a new audience, yes, find out the things that you listed there, but also find out these questions. What do they value? What are their current circumstances and how are they reacting to them? If you can get one thing off of this list, get that one. What's going on in their lives right now? How are they reacting to them? And this is a lot, has a lot to do with what you said, Zainab, because you're finding out what resistances they have to the training. Like they're not coming to this training like in a vacuum. Things are going on around them. And the more you know about that, the more relevant your training is going to be, and the better your story is going to be too. What do they fear? Why might they resist training? Zainab's. What do they do in their spare time? And this is one that I often hesitate to ask because it seems so informal, but I am always glad I asked it, because a lot of times what they do in their spare time gives me information. It reminds me, hey, these are just people. These are just people, and they're going to be taking this training. But it also keeps in the forefront of my mind that I could use something from their spare time activities to include in my story. All right, so take a snapshot of that if you want to, a screenshot. What do they value? Current circumstances? What do they fear? Why might they resist training? And what do they do in their spare time? So now we know who we're training. We have an action list. We know what we're training them to do. Now, how does all of that work to design a story for training and design the training that that story is used for? Okay, so let us. Okay, so Alicia says you also need to know what they are doing wrong, what are their challenges, yes, and what they are struggling with. And when you find those things out, Alicia, awesome raw materials for story, right? Because as you will see, the story for training is going to contain something very important, which is exactly what you're talking about there. And Eva, I'm sorry, but I am not going to dive into the learning styles argument. That's for LinkedIn. Okay, let's begin with the story design model. I'd like for you, if you're taking notes, to write story at the top of the page and then action at the bottom. Story at the top and action at the bottom. And what I mean by this is that our story for training has to actually have impact on the action that you want learners to take as a result of training, right? We can't just be throwing random stories into our training. So, stories and action, but we got to fill in the gap here so that our story does connect with action. So you know stories. What are the elements that make a story a story?
A beginning, a muddle, and an end.
Did you say a muddle?
A muddle, yes.
I like that. That's good. So yes, there's a person, there's a character, a human. There is a plot. Nice, Eva. There is a challenge, Anil, yes. Zainab, characters, setting, theme, conflict, conflict. Yes, so important to have that conflict. So you guys know a lot about stories. You know a lot about because you tell them every day, you speak in that language every day, and you listen to lots of stories every day. So it's okay, Anil. I mean, challenge is good. A challenge, a conflict, it's good. They're both good. I tend to use the word conflict, as you will see. So there are two elements of a story that must be present for there to be a story in training, okay? The first is relatable characters. The second is strong conflict. Relatable characters plus strong conflict. Now, I use the word relatable to describe characters because our learning audience has to have some empathy for these characters. They have to, we want our learners to have a response such as, oh yeah, I know a person like that, or that person is a lot like me, or I really get that character. They have to be relatable in some way. They don't have to be a carbon copy of your learning audience, but they do have to be relatable to your learning audience. And the second is strong conflict. And I use the word strong for a couple of reasons. One is because I want to remind us that we need it and that it needs to be as strong as possible. And that's kind of hard for a lot of instructional designers because we like to just, make this smooth training experience. This is exactly how you do it, We don't like that conflict. And so Anil is saying it's hard to fabricate strong conflict, but I'm going to show you how. I'm going to show you how. And it's a little hard for your subject matter experts. Exactly. Like subject matter experts are like, what? We don't want conflict in this story. We just want to show them a smooth path. But you guys have already identified that like conflict is one of those necessary elements of that makes a story a story. In fact, it's the thing that makes us continue wanting to watch the story. Once that conflict is resolved, there's really no more reason to engage with the story. But as long as we have that conflict is there, we want to keep watching. Alicia says sometimes they don't want to show what's wrong or challenging. Right. They want training to like live in a vacuum, like divorced from reality. Um, We don't like to show our shortcomings. Yeah, like storytelling can be vulnerable. Even for like instructional designers creating a fictional story, like putting it out there can sometimes feel very vulnerable. I agree with that. Eva, relatable makes it an engaging experience by building the sense of relevance. Yes, like conflict is life. Like conflict is life. And so we can't present something, that's just squeaky clean all the time. Yes, Alicia, it is vulnerable. It is vulnerable. So these two things combined together, relatable characters and strong conflict, combine together to produce this feeling inside of us. And how would you describe what that feeling is? When you're consuming a story, you know, reading a book or watching a show of some sort, what is that? How would you describe that feeling that you have when you're seeing characters that you care about in conflict? I can hear the wheels turning inside of your head. Oh, that's beautifully said, Alicia. Unease, looking for resolution, happy ending. Yeah, yeah. So emotional investment for sure. You're feeling that empathy. Alicia, I think that you said it the way that I often talk about it, which is a desire for resolution. When you have relatable characters and strong conflict, it produces a desire for resolution. A desire for resolution. But we've still got this gap here that we need to fill. See, once relatable characters and strong conflict have produced a desire for resolution, the story has done its job. It's done its job. And now your learners are ready for the last step, which is, of course, instruction. Instruction. And it's actually the instruction itself that brings resolution to that story. I'd like to share. So Eva, instruction as a solution. Yes, yes. I'm going to show you how that works. Okay. I'm going to share one video with you, or several videos with you. This first one just kind of brings everything that we've talked about, summarizes it all. And it is Rance 2 is what I call him. He is my animated self. Is going to present this first video. Hello, story designers. Yep, it's the animated me. And here I am on a stage in a theater. Black turtleneck, gotta act the part. Lights. Thanks. All of us have seen a live performance of some kind, and it's exciting because we're watching people act, and a story unfolds. Ah, isn't that sweet? Oh, Romeo. Well, we know how that story ends, don't we? I spent many years acting, directing, and writing for the stage. There's a connection between the worlds of theater and learning. Both of these worlds revolve around action. Unhand that sword. Hunger! On the stage, without action, there's no story, right? I mean, it would be difficult to imagine a plotless play. Careful with the swords, guys. In corporate learning, unfortunately, it's not that difficult to imagine. But without action, there's no behavior change. Nice pratfall. Medic. E-learning overload. Stories excite us. They stimulate our brains like we're involved with the action ourselves. Doesn't that sound a lot like the goals you have for training? Do you want your audience to be excited about learning?
Does training prepare people for action? Do you want them to remember their newly acquired skills for a long time? I'd like to help you discover and design the best story for your learning audience. To be or not to be? No question about it. Stories are the language of people, and it's fitting for us as learning professionals to speak that language fluently. Now, let's make your story for training come to life.
Okay. Um, Thank you, Eva. I appreciate that. Yeah. Without action, there is no behavior change. Like we need to train people to do things. So we have an action list. We have an audience profile. Thank you, Alicia. Um, the the benefits of storytelling to like for stories to stay with us for a long time. If you want training to stay with people for a long time, story-based training is a wonderful way to make that happen. So often when am asked, what are the pitfalls of stories for training? Um, one of the main things is the action list is not in good order. The second thing is the you don't know who you're training. You don't have an audience profile. So in story-based training, in instructional story design, I'd like to harken back to the model for a moment. Where do we get relatable characters? We get them from the audience profile. Since we know who our learning audience is, it's a whole lot easier to create relatable characters. And I have, some tools that I use to create those relatable characters from the audience profile. And then strong conflict. Where does that come from? We actually put these relatable characters into strong conflict with the action list. You saw that one coming, didn't you? So I'd like to share with you a story. And I'd like for you to, at the end of the story, let's talk about the characters and the conflict. Okay, that's all I'm going to say. Let's begin.
Hi, Natalia, come on in.
Thanks, Colin.
How's your week going so far?
Pretty good. I just had a difficult call, so I'm a bit flustered.
Would you like to talk about it?
It wasn't terrible, but yeah, the customer was really mad that they didn't get refunded. And I get it. It's just not fun to get shouted at.
I'm sorry you had to deal with that. Were you able to help them?
Yes, Brooke helped me out. The issue is resolved.
But I'm guessing they didn't thank you?
How did you know?
I've been there. Listen, if now is not a good time, we can reschedule this check-in for later.
No, I'm good now. We can talk. Thanks for listening.
No problem. We've got some great things to talk about your performance. But before we jump into that, I sent you some questions a couple of weeks ago to consider during this one-on-one. Have you had a chance to think about those?
Yes, thank you for the heads up. I always get really nervous with check-ins.
Natalia, there aren't going to be any surprises during this conversation. You and I have had touch points ever since you were hired 5 months ago. We've talked about your strengths and your areas where you can grow.
I appreciate that. I had time to think through your questions, and I do have some ideas about how I might be able to grow here.
Great. I'd love to hear those ideas.
Well, I know I ask for help a lot, and I'd like to work on that. Be a little more resourceful.
Okay, so let's talk about it. We know who our learning audience is. that these are managers who are struggling to conduct one-on-ones, and we have an action list. We have an idea of what they should be doing. So let's talk about it. Let's talk about the characters. Let's talk about the conflicts. What are your observations? So Alicia says very relatable characters. What makes you say that, Alicia?
It looks like a real situation. Basically, someone, it's never squeaky clean. Like you don't walk in an office to have a meeting and they jump into it immediately. So it kind of like it made a lot of sense that she came frustrated, and then the supervisor was empathetic and wanted to talk about it, even though that was not part of what they were gonna cover. So it looks very relatable as a scene in general.
Right, as a scene, as a set, as a scene, it was all set up to be very relatable. I agree with that. Zainab has a question for us. Was there conflict? Particularly, was there conflict with the action list? You guys are thinking, I can hear it.
Just
I
to
think,
get the
I
ball
think,
rolling. Oh, sorry, Alicia.
no, go ahead.
Um, I felt like things went too smoothly. The manager, did everything right, and you're like, wow, what a nice guy. I'm just waiting for some tragedy to happen now. I was almost, anticipating something to go wrong, but he did everything right. He sent out the question list earlier. He was supportive to hearing her struggles, and was even willing to reschedule. Um, he put his computers to sleep so that there would be no disturbances or anything like that. So I feel like it went too smoothly.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure if there was a conflict or in regards to the action list.
Yeah, that is very astute of you, and you are right. I mean, besides what Eva has pointed out here, that, bad employee experience, that is a source of conflict, but it has nothing to do with the action list. It was an external conflict, right? We're not training employees, we're training managers here. And so the manager, as Zainab points out, did everything right. Did everything right. So, um, maybe okay, like you guys are getting a little too deep here, a little too deep, right? You're right. There is no conflict. This is a conflict-less story. There's really nothing to train on with this story. The story itself is kind of like trying to train us how to do everything right. But there's a lack of connection because it's like it's not reality. This is not how things are going right now. So yeah, you don't know where you're going from there. Exactly. Nothing to resolve. Do you have a desire for resolution? No, you do not, because everything went exactly right. So we saw maybe some relatable characters. We saw a little external conflict, but nothing that was in relation to the action list. So we have really nothing to train on at this point. So that is a lot of the types of videos that I see in training, and they just leave no room, no room for observation, no room for critical thinking, no room for solving problems based on the story. We just get the squeaky clean story. So how do we resolve this? We resolve it by putting the character, the one who represents our learning audience, which in this case is Colin, into strong conflict with the action list. Anil, see, Rance, once we learn the new thing, we try to analyze from the lens of story design, and we're searching for a conflict in a conflict-less situation. Well put, Anil. Yep. I wasn't trying to trick you. I promise I wasn't. That could have been the video for the end of the training. Exactly, Alicia. I mean, this might be an appropriate thing to put at the end of training after you've given people an opportunity to observe and to critically think and solve problems. So let's see a different version of this story and how we might use it to train with. Would you like to see it? Would you like to see it? Would you like to see the second version of the story? Yes. Thank you, Anil. Why? Because you have a desire for resolution. Got you. Okay. Let's see the second version. Okay. So this is the course. This is the first screen of the course called You'll Be Rocking It. Right? Already from the very beginning, I'm like, what? What is this? I mean, I know what the course is about because I read the title, you know. And I know that it's been assigned to me because I've been having trouble with one-on-ones.
Hi, Natalia. Come on in. What's up?
I'm here for my one-on-one.
Sorry, yeah. I've been working on a report for management and sorry, time just slipped by so quickly.
Should I come back another time?
No, we can do it now. Just let me get your file. There it is. Okay, how's it going?
Well, I'm a bit flustered after the call I just took. They were pretty mad.
Yeah, sometimes there's just no calming them down. You know, you can escalate those calls if you need to.
Yeah.
Well, it looks like you've made some progress over the last 5 months. Great work. One thing you need to work on is using the resources online more proactively.
I know. I've been working on that.
I know it's difficult to put yourself out there and walk on your own, but all of our customer advocates have to face their fears, so to speak, and trust their training.
Yes, I understand. It's not fear. I'm still getting the resources under my belt for all of the systems we operate.
I'm sorry, Natalia. Hold on just a sec. It's just a quick ping from my manager. Yes, I'll have the report for you in an hour. Sheesh, you'd think the building was on fire with those guys. What were you saying now? You understand? That's good, that's good. Let's review your production numbers. Last month was a lot better. That's great. You're really improving, Natalia. If you can get call times down a few more minutes, you'll be rocking it.
Okay, so this time we don't see a list of learning objectives at the beginning of the course. We actually see a story. And that story, so let's stop for a moment and just get your assessment of the story so far. We're going to get into the training in just a moment, but what are your thoughts about that story? So real, unfortunately, so good, authentic, very realistic scenario. Do you have a desire for resolution? Okay, yeah, good. The title sounds uplifting and promising. It builds expectations, and then the story ends with an unresolved issue. Right. Pretty cool. And now when he says you'll be rocking it, it sounds so hollow, right? Like, dude has not even listened. Good. So he has been in conflict this whole time with every little item on that action list. So how do we train using a story like this? We follow it up with a question, a reflect question. And you guys could even, answer this in the chat if you would like to. How do you think she feels? Unheard. Okay, good. Or, okay, good. And so there's not a right or wrong answer to that, right? I mean, she could be feeling any of those things. A reflect question is there just to start getting you to think about what you've just experienced. Now, why do you think she feels that way? A, B, or C? Okay, so C. So let's say that you answer A. Look at the feedback here. It's not, you're wrong, try again. It's, is Natalia really afraid? No, she didn't express fear in her talk with Colin. So it gives us some context and maybe some reasons why this is not correct. Okay, what's a more likely reason? And she chooses that. So from her reaction, it appears that she feels Colin isn't paying attention to what she's saying. What might Colin do? So how might Colin listen and respond? Go ahead and read these and answer. Okay, so we have a variety of answers here. So mainly B. Yes, Colin can demonstrate active listening by asking a question that invites Natalia to talk more about it. He can ask an open-ended question and acknowledge, he can ask an open-ended, it should be question, and acknowledge how she is feeling. So this is the first moment of resolution, right? We've resolved a little piece of the story. Okay, so I can demonstrate active listening by asking a question when I am talking with my employees. We've solved it for Colin and we've solved it for ourselves. So this, and it continues through the action list, creating activities for each action on the action list and bringing resolution to each one, using the story as the centerpiece. So the story, so this is my model for creating training that is story-based. First, tell the story. Okay, and we saw that in a story between Colin and Natalia. It was full of conflict with two relatable characters. Next, ask a reflect question, not a right or wrong question, just something that will help them focus on the story. Often I will ask questions that focus on the emotions of the story. How do you think this character feels? Why do you think they feel that way? That's just gets them thinking about the actions of the characters that contributed to the emotions that they're feeling. So we saw that in this course. Next, solve. Give them something to solve, and a solve question will have, a best answer. And so we saw that as well. We give them plausible answers. And you'll notice in my options that each one starts with the same phrase. I understand, I understand, I understand, right? So not automatic giveaway, like, you're so stupid, like that kind of option would just be a giveaway, right? We want to make it really what is happening out there. And Alicia, this is to your point. When you start gathering what they're struggling with, those are great things to include in your multiple choice. Okay, figure out what they're doing right now, how they're listening and responding right now, and bring those in as multiple choice responses. Because then it's going to be like real to them, like, oh yeah, I actually would say, did you resolve it? But maybe I shouldn't be saying that anymore. Maybe I should say, would you like to talk about it? Right? And notice that we're not solving things about the order of steps. We're actually talking about real, tangible, concrete things that the manager can do and say. And then lastly, of course, is feedback. So, you're wrong, you're right. Not the best kind of feedback. And often what I will do with a solve question is I will include a job aid, a link to a job aid that they can refer to answer the question. And it'll be the same job aid they have in real life that they can refer to. Giving them practice consulting job aids is an excellent, excellent practice. So story, reflect, solve, and feedback. Your story has relatable characters and strong conflict, which produces a desire for resolution. You ask a reflect question, several reflect questions if you'd like, a solve question, and give them feedback. And you just repeat that. You can ask another reflect question or just keep going back and forth between solve, feedback, until you've made it through the entire action list. And often what I will say is like, I design the story first before I design anything else. Then I design the activities for the learners. And if content is needed, I'll put it in the feedback. Often this is reversed. Content first, we'll throw some activities in for engagement. Oh, and maybe we'll have a story, right? This brings everything into a more humanized, respectful way, really, of treating our learners by giving them the respect of being able to observe things, solve things, reflect on things, critically think. And so we have the before, the AI generated course on the left, and we have the story-based course on the right. And so which one do you want to take? Which course do you want to take on conducting one-on-one meetings? If you would like to learn how to master this process, you can scan that QR code there on the left and join the instructional story design certification track and become a certified instructional story designer at the School of Story Design. We also have a track on Beyond Story Production. Alicia has taken those courses. And certification is coming soon, Alicia, just so you know. And then you can read my book by scanning the QR code on the right there. You get a little sneak peek into the book. And at the top of the book page, there's a 30-minute movie that I created in Beyond that gives an overall of the instructional story design process. So, oh, thank you, John, for putting the link to there. Oh, yep. Thank you, Alicia. I sure loved having you in that workshop. Alicia's a very good Beyond producer, so if you need somebody. All right. Do you guys have any questions for me? I've enjoyed our time together. Thank you so much for coming. If you do have any questions, I'll stay on for a minute more, and I'd be happy to answer them. How do you feel about instructional story design now? Do you feel like you have a good idea of what story-based training can be? Anil, is story good for social, emotional content, or also for procedural content? I think it's good for both, Anil. I have, you know what? I'll put a link into the chat right now. And if you will scroll to the bottom of the page that I'm going to put in here, you will see that we're going to be it's our roundtable page. The roundtables are free. Would love for you to join us at the next roundtable. We're going to have more examples of story-based training at the next roundtable. So come to the roundtable, but when you go to that page, scroll all the way to the bottom and you'll see all of the recordings from our roundtables, and one of them is on technical training. Check that one out. Tips on how we get stakeholder buy-in for creating these stories. Yep. We cover that in the instructional story design experience. I have a whole lot of barrier breakers Zainab, if you'll reach out to me on LinkedIn, I'll I'll go ahead and send you that particular barrier breaker so you can get a head start. Thank you, Eva. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Zainab. I'm so glad that all of you came today. I hope you have a wonderful. Oh, yes, Alicia, I'm sorry. I didn't see your hand raised there.
Oh yeah, not a problem. I was gonna ask you, do you have any tips for when we don't have direct access to the external subject matter experts? Like, how can we get what we need for the story, especially for the conflict, just to narrow it down to one conflict, like one main conflict that we can address? Because we cannot address like five conflicts, like five different challenges. So, you have any like quick tips? I know that it would probably entail a lot of things to sort of like interview, maybe in writing, something we can send out to get like what we need actually to get started with the story.
Yes. So, first of all, Team Malone, you're welcome. I'm so glad that you came today. Alicia, so a couple of things. First, you can put the character into conflict with everything on that action list, multiple conflicts throughout the story. That's what drives the plot of your story. You are asking, what if you don't have access to subject matter experts? Am I right about that?
uh, Not direct access, because
Okay.
yes, I guess, I mean, I can't go at length
So there are
to
subject
explain what that
matter
means.
experts,
Yes,
but
there are, but they're
you're not,
external.
okay, but you're not talking to them directly. So yeah. Um, so when you are gathering, so if they are providing you with something, if it's a PowerPoint, if it's a document, um, surely they are giving you something to say. Or maybe they're just saying, we need training on, for uh, what's an example? How to have empathy for somebody, exhibiting empathy. And we just want you to create the course for us. Actually, at the roundtable, this upcoming, man, there's so many events coming up where I'm going to be sharing some tools for that. But reach out to me again on LinkedIn, and I will share those upcoming events with you where we can go into greater detail about how to use certain tools. Um, I'll go ahead and give you the name of one of them. One of them is Goblin Tools. I think it's goblin.tools.
Okay.
And on there, you will see um, a way of putting in something like exhibit empathy. And you hit this magic wand, and it creates basically a task list, breaks down that big idea into tasks. And it's actually made specifically for people with special needs who have trouble translating big ideas into small actions. It's created for a specific audience, but it's wonderful for us because we can break down kind of general ideas and actions into sub actions. And that's a great use for creating action lists. Then what I would do is submit, however you get those actions, submit the action list to the subject matter expert and say, hey, is this what you mean? Is this what you want people to do? And usually after that first draft, they'll be able to respond either directly to you or through whomever it's going through, um, to say, no, this is actually needs to be rearranged. We need this to be struck out. We need you to, do it in this way. And so just by giving them that first draft, it's like a gift, a gift to them. They're like, we don't even know our own process, but you're going to figure it out for us. And so you give them that and they're like, oh yeah, this is kind of how we do things. So I hope that helps. And
Yeah.
yeah, please do reach out to me, and I'll
That's
keep.
really helpful. I found that sometimes you have to put things in front of people, but sometimes
Yeah,
they don't know until they see it. So you got to, even if you get it wrong, just get it out there. Something
that's
for them to
right.
see. Thank you, Rance.
All right, guys. I hope you all have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much for spending this time with me today.
Thank you, Rance.